Good evening from my time zone, and to everyone who is now here joining us. Happy to see you all again. Today it's my part to say something about our topic, and just again the hint that Laura will put in the certificate of participation at the end of my lecture, and there's also a list of publications. You can put it in already if you like, Laura. So who is interested in maybe reading something of my stuff? These are English translations. The most of what I've written is in German, but you can see something on the list what is already translated in English. And not to be in the in order not to be in the position to introduce myself, I asked Ida to do this, and she is friendly willing to do it. So Ida, you start.
Thank you very much, Jost, and greetings to one and all across the globe. It is my great delight and honor to introduce Dr. Jost Schieren, who studied philosophy, German literature and art history in Bochum and Essen and in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and wrote his dissertation on Goethe's way of knowing and received his doctorate in '97 from Essen University. From '96 to 2006, he spent the important years teaching German literature and philosophy at the Rudolf Steiner School in Dortmund. Since 2008, he has been a professor of pedagogy with a focus on Waldorf education and the Dean of the Educational Faculty of Alanus University, Alfter, Germany. Professor Schieren travels extensively and publishes extensively to advance Waldorf education grounded critically in research. One of his more prominent, more recent publications is in German, the Handbuch Waldorf Pädagogik und Erziehungswissenschaft 2016, now already available on pre-order in English as Handbook of Research on Waldorf Education, available in slightly abridged form in 2023. And it is only one of his voluminous publications that we are glad are noted in the chat. So please make a copy. Last year, as a founder and intellectual architect of the International Waldorf campus, he also offered a talk, and that talk, we might remember, was on the development of feeling in Waldorf education. This year we go a step further, and Jost will bring us a talk I very much look forward to. What consciousness does a Waldorf education aim to develop? And with this, please join me in greeting Professor Jost Schieren.
Thank you so much, Ida. So I want to start and ask you to imagine you enter a Waldorf school for the very first time, or imagine someone entering the Waldorf school for the very first time. And if you do this, I think everyone, when he or she did it first time, had this specific feeling there is something different. And it's not quite easy to place where this comes from. So we can ask, what is different? The atmosphere is different. Yes. There are, of course, different architecture, different colors at the walls. There are different maybe materials as we are normally expect in a school surrounding. And maybe in a certain way, which is most striking, there are, so to speak, different people. But how can we place it? How can we describe it? What is the difference? And the interesting thing is, some people are immediately attracted by it, deeply attracted. And if those are parents, they decide to send their parents maybe to a Waldorf school because they think this is a place for my children. And others, they are in the same way rejected by it. And because they connect something with it, which does not fit into their way of living, so to speak. So the question I would like to put is, what makes Waldorf different? where is the point? Where is the difference? And if it were about those obvious signs like architecture, colors, materials, and so on, then it could be a bit of a problem connected to it. It could be like a bit, yeah, this is some kind of maybe an Amish situation, something where is everything different because it doesn't fit into our civilization. It denies our technology. It denies our civilization. Of course, there might be Amish elements, so to speak, from the outside, connected to Waldorf sometimes, but there are breaks in it. It's not homogeneous in this sign. There is technology in it, of course. There is a total. Waldorf happens in our time. So the question is how to put it. For example, if we compare it with maybe a Montessori pedagogy, what we see within the Montessori pedagogy as materials, for example, this is an essential part of the pedagogy. It belongs to it. You can't do Montessori pedagogy without using Montessori materials. And now you can say, yes, of course, we have our Waldorf materials and they are called Stockmar or whatever. So we have stuff like that, which has certain kind of watercoloring. And this is what we call Waldorf. We have to use those materials. But we all know, and Christoph made it quite clear in his lecture and in his talk, that this is not the situation. We don't have, in this sense, Waldorf materials. We use, out of reason, certain types of materials. We use certain methods and didactical things. But the sense of what Waldorf is not in these materials. They can be changed, and there's nevertheless Waldorf in it. So it's not the material, it's not the form, as Christoph put it in his first lecture. There is something else, there is an essence in it. And my claim and my goal of speaking today is just to suggest that the difference, what makes Waldorf difference is about there is a different consciousness. It's there is the aim to develop a different consciousness. So it's very much fundamental, which is going on there. There's some kind of a change and transformation process connected to Waldorf. And everything we do is to reach a certain sphere of consciousness by all what we do. And I want to try to describe where this comes from, what this consciousness, what are the characteristics of this consciousness. And I start by going into the epistemology. So we go back into the early time of Rudolf Steiner's first writings, when he started his philosophy. And just in the time frame I have to put it shortly, what Rudolf Steiner did in his philosophy, on the one hand, when we read his early philosophical writings, there is a lot of a critical view on mental images, on our everyday consciousness, which is built upon mental images. So everything we perceive from the outer world, nature, beings, trees, plants, clouds, whatever, human beings in our surrounding, animals, and so on, everything we realize in our normal consciousness, the way we do it is we form a mental image, and we can remember that mental image. And those mental images, Rudolf Steiner says in his earlier writings, they are not able, they are not fit, they are not deep enough to really go into the essence of the world. So they produce something which is more or less a subjective perspective on the world. It's our perspective. And It's our psychological, biographical, cultural, historical influence in it. Everything is in our mental images. So we form them the way we have been educated, for example. So they are not, they don't picture, they don't grasp the essence of the world because they only show our way of seeing the world. So our mental images are reflections of our view on the world. They are, what Steiner says, for example, in Study of Man is that they only provide dead images. They can't really reach the living sphere of the world. And they are, so to speak, in a certain way, they are passive. They are only a reception. We take them in. If we see into the world out of this attitude of the normal consciousness, we perceive that all the things around us are ready-made, and we just take them in as a mental image. By this, and this is what Steiner criticizes, and it's not only Steiner who does it. Steiner is in this critique totally in accordance. For example, which is normally not the case, he is totally in accordance with Immanuel Kant, a philosopher he wrote a lot of critical thing about, and he did a lot of argumentation against Kant normally. But in this aspect of mental images, they are on the same level to say that our consciousness is somewhat imprisoned within our mental images. We can't overcome them. We can't really use them to understand the world. This is something what Kant also says, that they are not fit, they are not able, not ready to understand the world. And we should just live with this. And the difference between Steiner and Kant, and there is the argumentation from Steiner, is I don't want to live with that. I don't want to live within an imprisonment of my own consciousness. I want to connect to the world. And this idea of connecting to the world, this is something which is one of the crucial points maybe of Waldorf education. I will later go into it, to give the children an opportunity to connect to the world. What Steiner does in his philosophy of freedom, he suggested a pathway to overcome this state of our consciousness. And the main thing by doing is what we can describe as activating our own thinking, finding the activity within our thinking process, because the mental images, they are the end of the process. They are the result of a very, very active process. But the moment the mental image enters our consciousness, we already have forgotten the activity which is behind. And Steiner tries to change the view in order to see, or in order to observe, he calls that soul observation, the activity which leads in the beginning to our mental images. And this activity is something he appreciates very much. It gives us, as human beings, and just cite it now, it gives us a connection to the spiritual world, because this activity is in itself a spirituality. And by what is grasped by that activity, ideas, living concepts, we touch something which is a spiritual world in itself. So within that activity, we really enter a new sphere. Novalis spoke about that. He said this is some kind of magic idealism. And the interesting word in that, in this, what Novalis used, the word magic, that means it's not merely idealism. It's not about ideas by man. There is a magic in it because we meet in those ideas and concepts something spiritual in itself, and this is the magical thing about it. So out of the activity of thinking, which is only produced by the human subject, we find something which is much more than the human subject. It's a world in itself. And this experience, it's the core element for Rudolf Steiner, that we can, out of the activity of our thinking, to find something which is valid in itself. There is a spiritual dimension connected to that. And I think this is, in short, really in short words, this is the essence of what Steiner did in his early writings. And for him, it's the essence of his philosophy, which leads deeper and deeper into anthroposophy. And I think this kind of new consciousness experience, he tried to be part of the learning experience within the Waldorf school. So what is done differently in Waldorf schools? The methods and everything, this applies to this, or this is related. This is related to this original philosophical experience. So there is a deep philosophy within Waldorf education, and this philosophy is connected to a different consciousness. This would be my first, so to speak, argument I would like to give. And now I would like to become much more specific and describe it and to show it and see elements of it. And I think I cannot mention everything. Maybe you have other ideas around it. And please feel free after my talk that we can speak about that. I just try to see, when I look out of this perspective of the epistemology of Rudolf Steiner, if I look out of that perspective on what's going on in Waldorf schools, it becomes some kind of transparent and clear for me. It sheds a certain light on it, which is helpful for me. And therefore, I would like to present it to you. And the first thing I would like to mention, what is differently out of a consciousness level, is the aspect of process-oriented. This is something I started with Laura before, that you have always, for every aspect I would like to bring now, we have one image, and you might be a bit surprised by this young man taking a selfie, what this has to do with what I call process-oriented. But I will go now a bit deeper into it. Okay, so let's start. Normal school life and normal life experience is often and only about having results. This is a currency, so to speak, which is important within our educational system. We have to produce results. It's like within the economy, we have to produce a result, and the result is what counts. And we measure the result in the end. And now imagine, for example, a young child going to school, and this young child, it loves maybe to do paintings, and it loves to do writings and calculating and everything. It's totally like Maria Montessori describes it, to be totally absorbed into his or her own activity. This is a wonderful situation you have, that as a young child, you are absorbed by your activity and you're in a flow with it. And then you go to school, and in the end, the teacher says, no, this is not good, and this is a great, maybe it's not sufficient here, and this is good, and so on. So very soon, the young child experience, if he or she have the experience of joy by doing something that is not value, there's no value in it. The only value is if it's a good result. And sometimes it's a bad result, even though it has been a wonderful time the child spent by doing it. And this interesting experience leads to it that has the effect in the end that we don't see that the process of activity is important, but only the result we produce, and that this result is going to be evaluated in the end. And the problem, what comes with it, that we lose our soul connection with our own activity. This is a very important thing I would like to say. We lose the soul connection with our own activity. I give you other examples. This happens very often. You have the situation, you have a young child, and which is quite often in modern families, and you have parents, and you have maybe 4 grandparents, and you have uncles and aunts around the child. And those adults, they speak in front of the child about the child and say, this boy has done this and this, and he's done this and this. And of course, after a while, the child get a consciousness of this attention he or she gets from the adults and sees him or herself in the view of the adults. So there is some kind of an externalization of the consciousness. I perceive myself out of the view of others because they speak about me in front of me. This is a bad habit to do because the consciousness of the child, which is normally totally internal, becomes external by that. And then it goes, the child goes to school and has the next experience, getting grades for results. And then we have all the media situation. This was the reason I gave, we have that selfie photography at the beginning. So at the moment, we have the experience that our self-consciousness is more and more based on external images. What we are is the way we are perceived from the outside. And our consciousness is some kind of a consciousness that we perceive from the outside. I often think for myself, how wonderful is it that when we are together with other people, we don't see ourselves. This is a wonderful situation. And this Zoom situation is destroying it in a horrible way. We are becoming all narcissists in a certain way because we see and listen to us the very same moment. But this is a wonderful consciousness situation that we have totally no self-awareness. When we are with others, we have awareness to see the others, but we don't see ourselves. But by all the media use we have, beginning from the early age, this way of becoming, of establishing an external consciousness of ourselves, this has the impact and the effect that we lose what I said before, the soul contact to our own activity. And now, I would like to go into that a bit deeper. What does it mean, soul contact to our own activity? Imagine the situation you sing, and then the singing process is finished, and someone says, "Oh, you are not able to sing. No tone has been. You don't sing the right melody and everything. That has totally." When you hear that after the moment, when the singing is over, you can't change it anymore. You are not in the situation to change it. The interesting thing, the moment of singing, which is some kind of, it's going on in time, you have to adapt to the voices of the others, to the melody, the moment you do it. And you experience it, if it's right or not, the moment you do it. And this is a very important experience that if it's right or wrong, can't be said after that. It can only be experienced from inside by doing it. So quality of a process can be tuned only within the process. And this is a very much important experience. And the riddle, which is in the background of everything of it, is that the human eye, the deep human eye, is pure activity. Steiner would also say is pure will. Is pure activity, is pure will. And the moment we would like to grasp it and put it in front of us, it's in this moment, it's not our activity anymore because we are the one who are now trying to observe something which is already over, which has been in the past already. So we never can from the outside get an understanding of the human eye, because it vanishes the moment we would like to understand it. We can't, if we want to post it in opposite of us in order to observe it, we are the one observing, or the human eye is something observing something which is in that moment not anymore the human eye. It's already in the past. So to understand who we are, to get a feeling and experience of who we are, we have to be in action. So we have to be in a process. And so many didactical aspects of Waldorf education are about going into a process and not interrupting this process. And not evaluate the results, and don't care about the results in that way that we give an evaluation in that, because they are only steps, they are only footsteps of someone who is going. Steiner gives that example in the philosophy of freedom. We may not misunderstand the footsteps of someone who is going with the person who goes him or herself. And this is often what happens. What Steiner says with the thinking process, there are footsteps in our brain, but this is not our thinking. This is only footsteps. And so what the children are producing is, so to speak, a footstep of who they are, and they are going further. We value them. They have a certain value, and we really take them by heart as teachers, of course. So the results are because they belong to the child. They are important and we value, but we don't evaluate them and give grades or something for that. And this is one of the main things. Waldorf pedagogy is very much careful that the children, by everything they do, they get a soul contact to their own process, to their own activity. Process-oriented. The next aspect I would like, it's something totally similar. It's not process-oriented, but I call it activity-oriented. And there is something else what I would like to mention around it. We know that it is one very much important aspect in Waldorf education that the children, they should do something. This is when I talk to my students who will become teachers, I say, please keep in mind the children should do something. There should be activity in the classroom. School time should never be boring. So it's to us to give them something to do. But it's, of course, not only the activity in itself, which is interesting. So to that they can do stupid stuff too, and there's activity in it. So what kind of things we try the children to bring into activity? And there's something really, maybe this goes into the contents of Waldorf education. For example, if we take aspects like geometry, form drawing, we had that image before from form drawing, maybe music, all those things, they provide a certain experience for the child. And the experience which is common to all those things is that the activity of the child, which comes from the individual, from the subject of the child, connects to something which is a lawfulness in itself. It touches something which is a law in itself. For example, by doing form drawings, it does the drawing, but the form is something which is a value, which is a quality in itself. The same with geometry, the same with music. There in music, for example, if you do singing together or whatever, you have different voices and you see they come together. So it's some intersubjectivity in it. And by coming the different individual voices coming together, there is something common higher in it. So it creates the experience that my activity, although it has to be done by the subject itself, leads to something valid and to a law which is valid in itself. And this establishes something which is quite important. This establishes trust, a trust in life, trust in life, and something very deep, I think. For example, the counter aspect of this would be the philosophy of constructivism, because constructivism says there is nothing more than a subjective human consciousness. Nothing more. Every concept is, so to speak, an historical, biographical, psychological, personal aspect. You don't find a law in concepts. You don't find a spiritual aspect in ideas and everything. This is something, this has been the outcome of Kantian philosophy, which is quite valid on the level of mental images. But what the idealistic philosophy, like Schelling, Hegel, and others, and Steiner himself too, the idealistic philosophy, they tried to show that there is some kind of a spiritual impact in every single idea. And the children, they meet this spiritual aspect by doing geometry, by doing form drawing, and so on. And this is some kind of trust, and it gives a deep religious trust in the world. And whereas constructivism, the outcome is fear and universal loneliness. This is an aspect of this philosophy, and we are much important. This is a very important biographical experience, I think, the children can already have when they do form drawing. It is in a deeply way, it is satisfying to meet a world which is based on itself, and we can deal with it and can have an exchange with it. The next aspect is already also quite similar, and you might question yourself what he's talking about all the time. It seems to be all the same. I hope you can see the subtle differences I try to make. The next aspect I called it's action-oriented. We know that there is a lot of school activities around craft work, and the children do something with their hands. And so the first has been, before that I spoke about activity-oriented, now I speak about action-oriented. The German word would be handlungsorientiert. There is something, maybe Freinet pedagogy is a bit similar in this context. What I mean is that the children do something which really is related with the world. Waldorf pedagogy is in a way practicable and oriented on practical stuff, pragmatic, so to speak. So it's about agriculture, woodworking, knitting, and so on. So everything we do in the world. Rudolf Steiner was so much against teaching abstract concepts. When he was arguing in Waldorf things, he always argued against, don't teach the children abstract knowledge, which is useless, which gives them nothing for their life. So what the children should learn, they should apply, they should experience that their knowledge is totally related to the world. And that when we act, we give the world the chance to teach us. We are taught by the wood how it should be treated. And the wisdom which is coming with the craft, it's the wisdom of mankind, because that has been a development of mankind, that we have an experience of all the materials and they should be treated in a different way. So in the moment we do actions in the world, we give the world the chance to correct us and we can learn from the world. And this is a knowledge which is not abstract, and this gives us a sense of truth. So truth is not something, it's not an invention of the human consciousness. Truth is an experience that of what we do is really connected to the world, and there is success. So now you see it's about results. But it's not the teacher telling us if something is good or bad. The world tells us. The moment our actions are working, the moment the world shows us what we have done is correct. So this is something, in the end, we have some kind of responsibility within our actions, because we see many actions nowadays, especially political actions, especially economic actions, they come out of abstract thinking process, and money makes it possible to realize. It's only money which makes it possible, but it doesn't fit really. So we do a lot of actions which do not take into account the real circumstances of the world. And this leads to a situation where there is no real responsibility of what we are doing. And I think it's a very high value we establish if we try to have a knowledge and wisdom which is in every single aspect built upon experiences we have made in the world. Yes, so far to that aspect. Now there is something new I would like to mention, and this is an aspect of development. The interesting thing is that development is, I spoke about that last time after the talk of Martin, that development is something everyone would accept and would say, yes, of course, there's development in the world. Yes, there should be development. But to take it sincere, to take, for example, the development of the child sincere, to give space for development, to accept the patterns of development, to accept individual stages of development. This is not self-evident. This is not given. For example, that we say that all the teaching should be age appropriate. This is something very unique for the Waldorf school that we say. We see that certain things should be done in a certain age of the children, and that we furthermore accept the developmental process of every child. Right now, we have some kind of development in normal school life. We have some kind of development thinking that we punish the slow learning students and we give awards to the fast learning students. This is how normal school life works. Someone who is slowly learning gets punished for it, has to leave the classroom, has to change the class. In Germany, even has to change the school. And those who are fast learners, fast developers, in this intellectual way, they got awards, they get good grades and good careers in the end, and so on. So this idea of development, which is in it creates some kind of there is no justice in society due to it, because we have only this kind of slow and fast development, and we don't give the children their time to develop. That would be one crucial point for Waldorf education, that we accept that children have their own time to develop, and that we give the space for that, and that we support the children with this. then there is one thing, what should be developed? Of course, we would say, yes, Waldorf schools, the main thing is the development of the human eye. And there is only one thing which can support the development of the human eye. This is by meeting another eye. So the meeting between student and teacher, this is the main power, the main force of development, especially in the beginning. And there are many aspects, Steiner often said, if we don't address the higher level of the child, we don't give the children the opportunity to develop. This is something interesting, that we always should address the next step. We should give the children the vision of their development, the way we treat them. And we are some kind of as teachers, we are the role model for this development. We support the children in the development. And furthermore, often a class teacher, maybe another aspect before, often a class, this idea of a class teacher, people from the outside and from the educational sciences, they criticize it and says, yeah, if there are no books, if there is only and of course there are books. If there's only one teacher for 8 years or whatever, if there's only one class teacher, this is very much subjective. Yes, it is. It is very much subjective because there is the personality of the teacher and the limitations of that teacher too. And the interesting thing is, after a while, every child becomes aware of the limitation of the teachers. Because after a while, we become aware of the limitations of the people around us. But we are also aware of all the wonderful talents and achievements every single individuality has. This is what is crucial for a human eye. Every personality has talents, has achievements, and by that we can learn. And everyone has flaws and has problems, and we get aware of that, and we can deal with that too, because this is the way a human eye can grow, by becoming aware of that, and after a while distancing this, but for a long time just getting supported by the subjectivity, by the personality of the teacher. So without that, human development is not possible. That would really be my stance, to say we need the teachers, we need other people as human beings, and teachers in a wide sense. Everyone has a teacher. And I could name many people in my life. I would say they are teachers for me. I learn something. And it's not older people, it's also younger people. I see a young person, see, oh, this is something I could really learn from that person. And to have this ideal that we learn from each other and create a school which enables us to do that. This is the thing which is really what means development as part of the school life, to have a meeting of human individualities, which is the source and the force of every development. And there's one part in the study of man, it's out of my way the deepest aspect of humanity I find in Rudolf Steiner's works. One thing is, for example, he says, a teacher can often experience that there are children in the classroom who are more intelligent than the teacher. And yeah, this is something, it's just a remark, but it's a wonderful remark, that there are students who are much more intelligent. And I can accept it and see them on eye level on that. It's not, we don't have, the normal school life creates all the time the gap. There is someone who knows and there's a lot of others who don't know. But if it's not only about knowledge, of course, the knowledge system is much more structured of the teacher, but the intelligence, the observing capacity and everything, this is totally different. And there you can see that there are students who are much better than yourself. This is one remark which is very much important for me. And another remark is he describes when you have students who are maybe, he says, a bit sleepy, for example, a sleepy student. He's not very much gifted student. You can have that situation. And in this lecture of study of man, which is, I think, a very precious part, he says every sleep is meant to finish and would lead in some kind of becoming awake. And this is the trust we have in development, that development will take place. And we have a view on the children, they will do their steps. And if you imagine you have a teacher in your background who just says, I'm there for you and to help you to develop. This gives self-trust. If you always have teachers who don't have that trust in you, you lose your trust in yourself. So we establish something which is much more important for our later life. If we find teacher in our early years who just say, I'm there for you and I help you to develop and I see you can develop and I support you, this establishes a deep ground of self-trust. And this is some kind of nutrition for the whole life. Yes, the next aspect I would like to say, a characteristic of Waldorf education, that it is, so to speak, holistic. This expression holistic can be taken in many aspects. With the picture you just saw is that what we do, we try to reflect from many perspectives, not only one perspective on everything. So we have a cultural diversity, so we try to be holistic in that every culture has its place in our curriculum. For example, that can be holistic. Another aspect of being holistic means not only the head, but a heart and hand. This is something which is important. And what I would like to mention in this for this topic is that there is what is quite important, that there is no hierarchy of subjects within Waldorf schools. Normally, in every other school, you have the hierarchy of subjects, which means mathematics and languages and maybe technology or something. Those are the important subjects. And music, sport, and crafts, those are the not or less important subjects. And this is something which is established in the very beginning. And even the teachers who teach maybe mathematics are more important than the sport teacher or something like that. And this is not, this leads to some kind of a division and differentiation of society in the end, because we say something which is intellectual is more important than something which is done with our hands. And this is something which is, we have to be very much careful. We established this selection, this kind of different evaluations in the very beginning of school time, that intellectual work, head work, is much more important than handwork. And you have a better career if you do better head work, for example. So the equality in society is destroyed by a non-holistic concept of education. This is a very crucial point for how to build our future society, that we give the children from the very beginning the feeling you are a whole human being and you have certain capacities, and your capacities can be a bit more art capacities, or they can be intellectual, or they can be capacities, you're a good sportsman, whatever. everything counts and there is no hierarchy, because this is how society works, that we need each other. We need a holistic society. Imagine there would be only people who do academic stuff. We would have nothing to eat. This is not the way society works. We need this holistic approach, and it should be established in the very beginning with a non-selective, no hierarchy in subjects during the school time. Yes, next part, Laura. This is, of course, often a critical point, how to bring religion into school life. Because if we speak about religion, we always speak about confession. So if it's Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Jewish religion, or whatever. This is not something I would like to mention now. This is, if I speak about religious devotion, I don't mean this. This is not something I would like to address. It's to establish a feeling. There is, this is what I mean by it, only to establish a feeling there is something higher than me. This is what I mean by religious devotion. There is something higher than me. And we can have that experience maybe in a community. We can have that experience maybe in nature. This leads, and this is important, to a certain humbleness. We are humble because there is something bigger than us. Because this is, I think, we can all see that out of a materialistic, non-religious civilization, out of technology, there is some kind of self-consciousness all over the world that there is nothing higher than us. So we are careless. We don't take care of nature anymore. We don't take care of our surrounding anymore. We don't think that there is something, we don't even have responsibility for the future anymore. It's just what only counts is me and now. And this civilization of me and now, and there's nothing higher, this is a real tragedy in our time. It makes us lonesome, it makes us greedy, it makes us fearful. It's something in school life we have to give the children this deep feeling of becoming devoted and humble and being connected to something which is higher and deeper. And this is not a concept, it's not a confession. It can have the color, it can have maybe the form of a confession, but this is not the important thing. This differs in every single school, but it's just a feeling there is something more around me. Ida, when she started her school every day, she gave this little verse. Maybe you can repeat that. You gave that.
Yes, under me the earth, over me the sky, and here am I, in all our languages.
So there is something around us, and I'm connected to something which is more than I am. And I can only be because I have that connection. This is a deep experience which should be transferred during school. Yes, the next. So Steiner often spoke about images, and we should use images. And this is maybe something, the most important thing he repeated and repeated again and again. We have to use images when we do schoolwork, because the idea is we do not want to address only the rational mind. Normal school life always addresses the intellectual mind, always addresses the consciousness sphere. And the rational mind, so to speak, is in a certain way poor of wisdom. There is not much wisdom in it. Even if the rational mind understands something, there are limits to it. And we have to address, as teachers, a deeper sphere, a feeling sphere. I spoke about that last year, a will sphere. And often it's nonverbal, so we don't have words for that. And it's a symbol for something which has a deeper wisdom in it. And it also gives us, I speak about here, the unavailability of things, because this is what our civilization often thinks, that we can, some kind of a domestic culture. We can rule over the world, and we can, out of our technology, everything is available for us. We need nothing. We are not dependent from anything. We are not dependent from seasons anymore. We are not dependent. We can travel where we want. We can speak with whom we want. Everything is available the moment we want it. And this idea of availability of things, that we can rule about everything, this is an illusion, so to speak. And the awakening out of this illusion is often very hard. Yeah, for example, now if we look into winter times, people have the fear they don't have a heating system because there's no gas in Germany or something like that. Then reality comes in because it's not everything available, and there is something deeper in our connection to the world. And to do teaching work, how we bring contents into school life, there should be something, I would call it, to touch the deeper riddles of life, and to be aware that our heart carries more wisdom in it than our mind. So if we use images, fairy tales, or whatever, imagine if you see this plants here, Löwenzahn in German. I don't know the English word right now. Peter, do you have it for me? Or someone else? Löwenzahn.
Dandelion.
Dandelion,
I think.
Thank you.
That would be my guess.
So you see the transformation. What is very nice in that blackboard drawing is that the seeds are going with the wind, and you see there is something coming in it. The wind has some kind of it's a new power, and you see you get a feeling for transformative processes, and life is an ongoing transformation process. And by just seeing that picture, it becomes a symbol for transformation, so to speak. And this is something, I would say, we try to teach the heart and not the head. If we use a non-verbal, symbolistic, or an artistic way of dealing with things, and to be maybe really becoming aware not everything is available for us. So far. Yes, the next one, Laura. We had in Germany, and it had also been done in the US, there had been a review in Germany, it has been Rundle and Bartz, an alumni study. In the US, it has been by Douglas Gerving and Mitchell, a review of alumni. How do they look back upon their school time? How was their experience in school? And there's, in a lecture in 1917, Steiner says, when there is one goal which should be achieved within the school, Waldorf school life, or within the educational life, is the children should have a joyful learning experience. And this is something which is, I would say, it's on the one, you can change now the picture, Laura. This is something which is totally self-evident. Yes, it would be nice to have a joyful learning experience. I had a situation being a tutor of ninth graders, and there had a talk with the mother of one of my students, and she said, you know, Mr. Schieren, when my son has been on a public school, and when he came home in the sixth, seventh grade, when he came home, he didn't talk, he didn't eat, and he was very much pale. And as a mother, I got the feeling here's something wrong. Something, it's not good for him. So I looked around and I found the Waldorf school, and I asked him, do you want to go there? And he visited it. And the first and second day he came home, he ate as much as he can. He didn't stop talking, and he was very, very lively, totally lively. And I knew this was a good school for him. And when he told that story for me, I got the feeling, where is any school evaluation system which takes this into account? You know, every PISA test, everything we have, we take into account how are the results, how are the grades, but how actually is the everyday experience of the children? Do they love to go to school? Are they lively? Are they joyful in their learning work? This is what counts, because this makes them human beings in the end who likes to pursue their goal of life. And so this is something which is, I think, so important for us to have a salutogenetic, in a broad way, idea that school life should be healthy and should be joyful. And if something is, if there is a problem with it, we should take it sincere. Steiner says that very much, but this counts much more than evaluation systems like PISA and so on, just to say that. Yes, the next. Yeah, you see here a typical situation. People have only one focus of attention. And this focus is on the iPhone, on the smartphone. There's no world around us. Yeah. You can stop it now. So what I would try to show by this, what Waldorf education does is very much important to address the body and the senses very much from the beginning, so that school life is not only intellectual life, but the body and the senses, they are part of myself, and they connect me with the world. And by media use, we have that experience of being disconnected from the world. And connection to the world is very much important. But the interesting thing is we have a long, long tradition in the interpretation of Christianity in Europe. If I speak about Europe out of this perspective, the interpretation of Christianity in Europe, maybe by the Catholic Church, for example, has been that everything which is related to the body is a problem. That our life before we die is not so important, because the important life starts after we are dead. So there is a life after life, and the afterlife is the interesting one. Everything we do in our present life is just a preparation for the life after death. You see what a concept that is, that we see now we are in the stage of which is not important, and the church helps us to overcome it in a good way. And then the important, the essential life starts after death. And the more we are connected to our senses, and the more we are connected to our body, the more problematic is it for the life after death. So don't take it into account. have a distance. So body and sense rejections, it has been everything which is connected to the body and the senses is sin. You may not connect to it. And this kind of interpretation of Christianity, I don't say this is Christianity, it's an interpretation, becomes a habit. And it becomes a habit not now in a religious way, but for example, in abstract science, that we say what we see with our eyes, that doesn't count. We have to, because there is no truth in it, we have to do mathematics. So only mathematic formula are maybe able to explain the world, not what we see. So also school life means we only take our body to carry our head into the school. Everything which is abstract knowledge is important. Everything which we do with our body is not so important. And what Waldorf School does to take the body into account, to take the senses into account, to see that this provides means for us, which connects us to the world. I'm being a bit faster because the time is running out a bit. There are two more things I would like to mention. The next one. 11. We had that last time with what Martin brought in his talk. I give another example, then this is maybe some example out of don't know which Waldorf school, when there is maybe the topic India. You can stop it, Laura. What I would like to say is that the regional culture is part of I speak now in anthroposophic terms, part of the etheric and astral body of the young children. It is a constitutional part of it. It is a constitutional part of who we are, where we are coming from. So we should take the regional culture very much, take it very much sincere as part, it belongs to the children. And if we have many regional cultures in one classroom, we should take it into account. Just to say one thing, because it happened to me was very interesting to experience. As Ida said, I have been teacher myself in a city in Germany called Dortmund. And this city is maybe like in English city, Liverpool or Manchester. There is only one topic in that city which connects the people, and this is football. The Borussia Dortmund football club, this is something, it's the soul of that city. And I was not very much connected to football when I became a teacher. But I experienced very much when I came into the classroom Monday morning and wasn't aware of what has been going on Saturday on the soccer field, on the football field, I would have never have any contact to the students. That wouldn't have been possible. And there was a knitting teacher, and there is some kind of saying you may not use black in early childhood as a color, but the football colors of Dortmund are black and yellow. So this teacher was a very strict Waldorf person, and I have 3 boys, and they should be rainbow colors in everything they do knitwear. That leads to the situation that for the school they did something with rainbow colors, but in the afternoon they did their black and yellow stuff for the soccer game, because that was something which was their connection. So what I experienced by that, then we moved to Bonn. From Dortmund, and the very moment the interest for football was vanished, passed away, because here is something else interesting. It's Carnival. Carnival is what is Cologne and Bonn famous for, Rhine Valley. So what I want to say is the regional culture is very much something which constitutes the personality. It's something which belongs to us. It is a mood of the people. It is something which is maybe you find in the dialect the people speak. It belongs. It's the atmosphere of the dialect, and something which is very much different in different cities, and it should be addressed, because out of globalism we don't have real culture. Globalism is like Coca-Cola and McDonald's. It's like we have branches, we have materialistic identities, but we don't have culture identities. And those should be addressed and should be taken sincere in a deep way. I would like to say this. And what I'm happy about is that Waldorf is open for that. There is no need that we do what Martin said, Faust and Parzival and all those things in other countries where there is no relation to it. Every country, which is very much important, should be aware of its own cultural background and roots, and this is some kind of nutrition for the children. When they grow up, of course, they can relate to it or not. They are free to relate, but even if they distance and find a new culture, find maybe a new religion or whatever, those early experiences where they have been connected, this is the interesting thing. The power to connect to it is interesting, not the content. Yes, and now I come to my last point. Yes, thank you, Laura. There is a German poet called Lessing, and he wrote a play called Nathan. And Nathan is a Jewish person, and it's called Nathan the Wise. It's a wonderful play. I like it very much. And with 11 graders, I usually read it too. And there is one daughter, a Christian, so-called Christian daughter. It's an adoption child. It's not his real child from Nathan. And but he was her father in a deeper way, and her teacher. And she says at one part of the play, and this is some kind I take very much by heart, she says, "Everything I know from him. And I can tell you till now where and how and what I have learned and why I have learned it." So learning is something which is not taking something in, but I learned this from this person, and I know where I learned it and how I learned it and what it was, and much, much more important, why I learned something. Maybe in the moment the children learn something, they don't know why, but later on they know why. I know that, I call that a learning biography, awareness of my own learning biography. When I do teaching work at my university, I often ask my students, there are 50% Waldorf students and 50% other students from public schools. And then I ask the students from public schools, do you still have your learning materials, your written books and so on, where you put your homework in and so, from your first, second, third grade? Some of them, maybe 5%, they raised their hand. If I ask the Waldorf students, do you have still your Epochenhefte, how do you say, main lesson block books, how do you say that, Epochenhefte?
Main lesson books, yeah.
Yeah, main lesson books. They are 90 to 100%, they raise their hand. So, and even if the students don't have it, the parents have it. So we are connected to our learning process. And this is something, or we try that the students are connected to their own learning process. It belongs to them. It's part of their personality, of their biography of learning. And what Recha, this is the name of the daughter, says, I know everything I know from him, and also I know the teacher who taught it to me, and what it was, why, how, and where I learned it. This is something which gives me an awareness where I am with my learning process, and shows me that I have a reflective perspective on my own learning. We don't do it in the early childhood, of course. We don't produce this reflective perspective view on our own learning process. But what we do in early childhood, you remember that photography Laura showed with the grains of the world. You know, we speak about nutrition, we speak about grains, but then we show every single culture has its own grain, so to speak. And it belongs to a certain culture. It has a history. So there is we have a multi-perspective approach to every single aspect we teach the children. And the moment we have high school students, they become a consciousness of this multi-perspectiveness, because we need that. This is a capacity of our consciousness that the contents we have in mind, they are only stages. And we try to connect to other perspectives in order to get a better and deeper view, and not only stay within my own perspective. This is a high goal of education we try to introduce in Waldorf schools. Yes, I think that's it so far. Thank you so much for being so patient. I took a lot of time, but I'm happy now if we can have a talk and have an exchange about this. Thank you so far. And thank you, Laura, for providing those images.
I make a start.
Thank you, Christoph.
Thank you, Jost. This was wonderful. It was a kind of a big picture, a big image about the essentials of the Waldorf. For me, it's in this moment not so easy to comment it, because it was the way you have described it, all these elements that were the real essential attitudes passed by. So that was a wonderful overview. I wonder about what you said about the development of the self, of the human eye. That happens because it meets other human eyes. That is a wonderful idea. I'm very happy with that. On the other hand, there is this quote by Steiner out of the curative course, where he had that staircase idea, that the eye of the adult works on the astral body of the student, and the astral body of the teacher works on the etheric body of the student. The etheric force of the etheric qualities of the teacher work on the bodily growth and health. That together is also I and self.
Yes, I tried to mention that when I said that we address the higher stage in every child, and we have to be, and not to reduce, that is something Steiner often said, that we reduce on the level of the child, and then what should the child learn? We should have the highest level and bring it in a way to the child that it can have a relation to it, maybe not by the rational mind, but the heart understands deeper than the rational mind. And after a while, what is where there is something inscribed in the heart, during life, it reveals for our mind. And maybe much later, we think about we experience something as a child, and it becomes meaningful when we are 30 or 40 years old.
Yeah. That was a wonderful quote from you, that you described that sometimes we do not know why we learn something, and 20 years later, suddenly you have it. Yeah, I have examples of that, but there's no question.
Yeah, Martina.
Yes, hi. I also just wanted to say thank you so much for this lecture, because it was really helpful at this point in time where I'm in foreign language teaching at the school, and we're dealing with workbooks being introduced at a quite early time, so grade 5 or so. And the school introduces the workbook in English language teaching. I'm not so sure about Russian. I believe so, they do that too, even earlier. And I do find myself struggling a little bit coming from the lower classes and having the approach that I sort of brought into the school with my way of thinking and teaching. And then the workbook that is almost like very often comes from the outside. There are, how can I say, so in German we would say that Begriff is already da. It's like the term is there, and then suddenly the children are then being like taught what they need to know about it. But it's like I haven't introduced it yet, and they're in the cupboard. All the books are in the cupboard, and I keep pushing it back, and I keep saying, "Oh, let's wait till Christmas, and I can prepare them a little better for this." Yeah. So, having listened to you tonight was really inspiring and reaffirmative for the way I would like to do that, and probably also very slowly and gradually prepare them for the shift and working with a sort of mainstream workbook. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Martina. Yes, please, Judy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. I hope it's okay if I ask what you think, Jost, around this topic that is coming up in our high school around global warming, global climate change, that type of thing. How is that an idea or something? I mean, I feel like it's falling down a little bit, the way we're bringing it to the students. I'm just wondering if you can give some insight.
I'm not an expert for that subject and topic, but I'm sure there are people here, and of course Martin should know about it. Thank you for that question. I think it's an important question. We should take it very much sincere, and I think ecological consciousness, nature consciousness, and that the climate is something which is part of our life, and we should take sincere. We have to address it in school life. I don't know if there is some kind of curriculum already established around it. This is your question, Judy. And I would like to ask people like Sven and Martin if you can say something to that.
There is if I can speak first, there is a fairly detailed curriculum for ecology as part of biology, of course, in the existing published curricula. I think there's no problem with that. It's a major topic. There's only two major topics in biology. One of them is evolution, the other one is ecology in the upper grades in the high school, and they get a lot of space. But I think the more important question is, I've heard that some teachers are inhibited to address what they consider to be a political question, because, of course, there are political forces that are denying the human effects of climate change or the extent of it and so on. There are a lot of interests involved in that. And for that reason, they hesitate to get involved in what is seen as a political topic. But I think this is a grave mistake. It would be like saying, we don't deal with the Holocaust because we don't want to embarrass people.
Yeah. I take that as an opportunity to give the word to Ida, and then because there is, for example, there is Cecilia and Luis, they write into the chat that they're at Freie Waldorfschule Bonn, they are from Argentina, and they develop a program for nutrition and health, for example. But Ida has an initiative concerning this group here, and I would like to give you the word, Ida.
Thank you. Very briefly, this is such a good example of where we very much want to continue the conversation. And so Jost and I discussed, if you are comfortable with sharing your contact information, if you could put it in the chat, and because then Laura and Jost can make a contact list so we can pursue these conversations as we are moved, so we can really grow to be a strong professional learning community. So if you are willing and comfortable, put your contact information in the chat, and then Laura and Jost will issue a shared contact sheet.
Yeah, I think the idea of Ida is wonderful, because it's an opportunity. We can have an exchange maybe on different levels. Now we see the names. If we have the contacts, if you want to share your contact, people can write you directly and have you could have contact to maybe Cecilia and Luis and so on. But of course, this is something that should be with your saying yes to it. Maybe one last question from Anna, and then we close it. Yes.
Hello, thank you again for the initiative. I just want to bring up one aspect that I've noticed on my students and in the classrooms. I'm an upper school art teacher, and I've noticed in the students that they're losing the sense of perception of depth. So if I ask them to draw a still life with the objects on the table, they tend to become a bit confused. If I take a photo of the still life, they can do it very or much easier. This brings to me a serious concern. First of all, how much have they been looking into things in the previous years, in particular in middle school? How much are they looking into the real thing itself? And it reminds me of what you mentioned about how relevant it is for the students to connect and the children to connect to the things themselves. And by being in front of the thing themselves, how this connection is much deeper. So that's one of the things. The other thing, if we ask the students, instead of painting a photograph of a flower, go and choose your flower. Go. Step outside, go and collect it. It does bring a relation to the flower that they're choosing. So there's something that happens between the student and the flower. And also there's the action of going and picking the flower. So in a way, I'm just trying to bring this attention. Do we really need to use photos in this age where they're so attached to their mobile phones? And just to think, how much can we do with the real things, which allows them to have a deeper relation to things and see things in a more deeper way. Thank you.
I think it's a question that needs a lot of talking, and there are many aspects to it to give a good answer. I think the photography you can use it, but not in the beginning, and because the photography is, so to speak, the perspective of the photographer on the object. And if we take it as the object and not as a perspective of the photographer on the object, there is some kind of illusion in it. So I would always start with reality and have a relationship to reality. And from that, I can evaluate and can see what is a perspective which is given on a photography, and I can discuss with the students, if it's higher grades, the difference between maybe a painting of a flower and the photography of a flower. And so this becomes much richer if the students in the very beginning are starting with a real object, and then go in the next step, they take maybe perspectives on the object. Is it clear as an answer?
Yes, I was just good because when you mention about the action and about the law that's behind something, yes, yes. Sometimes I do feel that in younger children, I do understand that there's the need to present the same flower, the same image for each student, because it might be that what we are addressing is finding that law. And as they become older, then they can go and find,
yes,
the flower by themselves. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you all of you. Now it's a bit later as normally. And I would like just to announce the lecture next Tuesday. Is it right? Is it from Australia, Laura?
I think she will be in Ireland, so it's going to take place.
She is nearby in Europe, our
Yep.
time. This is Lisa Romero, and she speaks about the relationship between inner development and the work as a teacher in the light of current challenges. So this is something, of course, a Waldorf teacher struggles with, question of inner development and being a teacher. And she's an expert in that field, has published many books, is giving talks. Originally, she is from Australia, as far as I know. So I'm looking forward to that. And wish you a good evening, good night, good day, wherever you are, and looking forward to see you next week. Goodbye all together.
Goodbye and thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.